the space shifted for him to hold it for me. And in those moments, on about 4 or 5 occasions, I just would sob and I would just allow myself to be held by him and drop into a level of authenticity and truth with him. And that's all they want. A lot of people think, oh, I have to perform when I'm around a horse. No, the horse does not want you to perform. They want your inside and your outside to be congruent, to be a match. And in those moments, what I've really learned with him is showing up as I am in the truth of who I am allows those horses to also show up for us and to come in and support us in ways that sometimes we don't always get in our human relationships.
There are healers on this planet with the power to soften the suffering of mankind, yet they have remained in the recesses of the world, abused, discarded, and labeled as trash. This is The Touch of a Mustang. I am your host, Shalise Clough, and I'm here to tell the story of wild horses, Mustangs, and the humans who are discovering and sharing their gifts while working to protect their well-being and preserve their spirit so this divine power won't be lost. Join us on this quest with the Wild Mustang.
I'm Vanessa Petronelli, and I'm the creator and founder of Equine Soul Journeys. And I have been working with humans globally for over 17 years. And in the last several years, I've been partnering with horses to help humans come into alignment with their most authentic, true self. And my specialty is really helping people navigate transitions of every type, from professional to career to they're in the later stages of their life and they've retired and they don't know what their purpose is and they feel like there's more, to people navigating, marriages, relationships, divorces, etc. I mean, you name it. And really the heart of all of it is this unwinding of old identities and what is no longer in resonance with the truth of who they are, whether it is something happening externally in their lives or it's actually going on internally, which I think is actually one of the tougher ones, because there's really nothing you can point a finger at or point a finger to, and not even at yourself, because sometimes you don't even create these types of transitions, which are bigger spiritual awakenings and the revealing of who we're becoming next. So, I've walked with people from all walks of life, and I wasn't always focusing solely on what I've been doing. I mean, there's been so many iterations and transitions for me too, but the horse work for me has never felt more aligned and alive and fulfilling than anything I've ever done previously. And I love my work. I've always felt it is an honor and a great responsibility to walk with humans in the most intimate way of their soul and their soul's growth and their own evolution as a human being and their consciousness. But the way I've facilitated this has just been the most alive I've ever felt around anything I've ever done and in all the iterations of my work. So it's just it's been a beautiful journey. It really has.
What was the thing that started you down this path of deciding to help people in their journeys and difficulties and struggles?
Well, it's a bit of a story, and I'll try to keep it as succinct as possible, because there was a lot of things that have that were kind of leading me in that direction. But when I was a young girl, I was always very intuitive and very spiritually connected. And around 13, 14, I heard the voice of what sounded like God tell me that I was going in a certain direction in my life that was actually pretty surprising for me, because I was not inclined to go in this direction. Like, that was not something that I in the past had a dream about. So I heard God say, you're going to go into the entertainment industry and you're going to help a lot of people and you're going to get involved in projects that are going to make the difference in the world. And I was like, okay, wow. a couple weeks after I got that message, life just started to orchestrate in this really synchronistic way. And I ended up getting an audition to be in a pop group for young girls. So remember, this is like time of Spice Girls. So I am aging myself right now.
Hey,
Boy
I'm there
band,
too. It's all
Spice
right.
Girls. I mean, it was a great era. And
It
so
was.
I had a friend at school. She was a friend, but she was also acquaintance. Like, she wasn't somebody that I was always hanging out with. But she was in the music program and she found me, and we were in, like, I think, when I was in ninth grade, and she found me and she said, "You need to audition for this girl group. Like, you're perfect for this." And I thought, well, I don't have any professional singing experience, but I did play piano and I learned by ear, and I played for like 13, 14 years. So I was like, what do I have to lose? Let's do it. And I auditioned, and I remember sitting in that audition room with my mother, looking at her and being like, can you imagine if I actually make this thing? Like, there were all kinds of stage parents and kids that have been in the entertainment industry for years. But lo and behold, several auditions later, I got in. And that was the start of this amazing career that I had for 10 years. And I really wholeheartedly believed that what I was going to do was going to really make a difference in the world. And, I went through high school, I got my college degree. And throughout that time, I started to also get involved in personal development. And the more that I got into personal development, the more I started to see that the longer I was in this industry and had all these opportunities, they weren't feeling like they were really aligned anymore for me. And I would have these weird situations happen throughout my career where, I would get this opportunity that would catapult my career to the next level. And then suddenly something would happen and it would be taken away. And it wasn't one time or two times, it was many times. And I started to look at that as a sign that something's not right here. And at 23, I had my first life coach. I had done Landmark at like 2021. I started my first business at 21 years old in event marketing and promotions. And then Louise Hay came into my life. And, I really started to ask myself the question, what does it mean to really love yourself? What does it mean to be on purpose? Is this really my purpose? Am I meant to be doing this type of work? And the answer was a resounding no. And at 24, I was set to go to LA because that was always my dream, to live in California. I grew up in Toronto, Canada. And just on the cusp of me leaving, I got a virus all over my face. And that was my sign to not go because, you're getting judged on your appearance and how
Yeah.
you look, right? And long story short, that was the beginning of me starting to ask myself the question, like, what am I really here to do? I know I'm here to help people. I know I'm here, to do something in this realm. And I loved the whole experience of being coached when I did at 23. And when I was, in school, people were always coming to me and always asking, how I knew the answer to certain life questions. And they wanted to tell their problems to me. And I had people opening up to me all the time. And I thought, well, maybe that is something to look at and to look into. And so I had gone on a whole year of soul searching and really figuring things out. And then I got into this work in my postgrad and started doing coaching, taught yoga, mindfulness, all of that. And started my business at a time in Canada when people had no idea what coaching was and what investing in a life coach would be like. But all of my psychic gifts, all my intuitive gifts also came online, I guess you could call it, at that time too. And so I was doing this energy work, I was doing this coaching work, and the premise of everything from day one was helping people to remember who they are. And I know that's a very cliche statement that so many people who are in this work will typically say, but I really did believe that and feel that. And it was just the start of that. It took off. And I had a very successful career early on. I was teaching a lot of yoga. And then I met my husband, and that's how we ended up here in the States. I moved to California, now Tennessee. And when we came to Tennessee, it started to shift. So all my work was virtual and it was previously all in person. I did retreats all over the world, worked with people from 5 different continents, and it's been amazing. I did a lot of really incredible things. When we came to Tennessee, it was the horse, though, that welcomed me. And I had a vision back in 2018. And it was a vision of having this beautiful retreat center and a sanctuary for horses and other animals, because I have a passion for dogs too, to help people heal. And I didn't know that these things really existed. I mean, I knew about equine therapy and all that. And I'd, ridden horses before and gone on trail rides, but it was not something that I grew up with. I never grew up living on a farm or having my own herd or a horse. I love them, but it was not in my realm. It was not introduced to me because my life was very much about it was very achievement oriented and very performance based. You get good grades, you get rewarded. I was focusing on the entertainment industry and making it in that. And so there was no real opportunity for me to kind of ask myself, like, what is it that I really, truly, deeply want? What makes me come alive? And animals always have. So when we moved to Tennessee, we were waiting for some friends, and this Belgian draft from way out in its pasture, we had stopped because I saw, these two horses out in the distance, and we were waiting there. And I thought, oh, they're so beautiful. They were grazing. And then this horse just locked eyes with me and it was pretty far out, walked over to me and would not let me out of its sight. And that horse communicated to me more in the 10, 15 minutes I was sobbing into his muzzle than anything else could have at that moment, because I was in one of the biggest transitions of my life. We were moving. We didn't know where we were going. I felt like my career, my business was changing. Things felt like they were falling apart. I was in the throes of perimenopause and I had no idea that I was. It felt like my whole life was just falling away and falling apart. And in this undoing, this horse offered me, without asking me anything, just telling me, you're going to be okay and you belong here. And I heard this resounding voice come through me, and the softness of this horse changed everything. And that's how we came here. And then slowly everything started to unfold with the horses. So that's why it's a big story, and a lot of things led me to this, but it's always been, I truly know and believe that it's been my purpose to do this work. And I feel very blessed that God chose me to steward it.
Yeah, it's beautiful. So tell us about the horses. How did they come into your life? I always find it so intriguing that people who are like, I've never had a horse and then I got one. I'm so impressed by that because I grew up with them and I still feel intimidated sometimes. But how did you enter the horse world? And we definitely want to hear about your Mustang.
Yes, of course. Of course. I can't wait to share. So when we settled here, initially I was thinking to myself, I need to find a place where I can volunteer. And I had looked at a couple places and I didn't really see anything nearby that really spoke to me. It was several years ago, just before my 40th birthday, that I was in a session with a coach kind of healer. And he had asked me, what is it that you really want to be doing? What would light your whole heart and soul on fire? And I said, horses and dogs. I have 2 rescue dogs too. And I'm like, I want to partner with them. I want to incorporate them into what I'm doing. I just don't know how. I would love a piece of land. I don't know how that's going to happen, and it was in that moment that something clicked, because I already knew all of this. I had been playing with the idea mentally for a while, but there was a part of me that didn't believe it was possible. Even after doing all this work on myself and helping people with living in the realm of impossibility and having it become possible, I was in this space of how is this going to happen? I'm like, hello, we're in Tennessee. It's like horse country out here. But it was an internal declaration that started to open up the opportunity for horses to come into my life. And again, just like the entertainment industry, is as soon as I made the agreement and something just clicked and these doors started to open, and I was meeting people with horses on a plane ride to Toronto, and she invited me to come out and to meet her little filly.
Yeah.
And, then I started to research, other organizations, and I found a local sanctuary here, and I started to volunteer because I'm like, I need to immerse myself in horse world first and learn how to handle
Yeah.
horses and be around them and feel confident and get into horseback riding again and understand horsemanship to really understand this. And I had been watching many videos and YouTube channels, and I was already reading a lot of books, but there's nothing like the experience of being with them, as I'm sure you know.
Yeah. No.
You have to. So I started volunteering there and I loved it. And then a while later, I had asked, I had made my intentions clear pretty early on. Like, I would love to do some kind of healing work with humans and horses, like incorporate the work that I do and see what that would be like with the horses. And the man who ran the sanctuary was very open, and he wanted to bring equine therapy, which is not what I do, by the way. I'm not a therapist. But he wanted to bring a more traditional aspect to his sanctuary eventually for the senior horses that he had rescued, most of them saddlebreds, Belgian draft. And so he was open to the idea, and he kind of let me do it. And the horses prepared me. So I was in my head, I was thinking, I need to go and do all these different trainings and all of this before I can actually do this. And a friend of mine, she's a body worker. She's also a client and colleague and a friend. She had reached out and she said, I would love to, do some work with you. And I invited her out to the farm to kind of see the horses, to see the space. And it was just supposed to be a little, just a kind of a visit, a short visit. And one of the saddlebreds, Duke, who's very spicy, very opinionated, very intimidating, but also very funny, he was standing, just as she was about to leave by the fence line. And all I heard him say, because I can communicate with the animals, he said, "You're ready." I thought, okay. And all of a sudden, my friend, colleague, client, she just started sobbing. And all of this recognition, this realization about things from her past and family started to surface in that moment. It was a 90-minute session. And I held space and I just followed intuitively what I was feeling. I was following the guidance of the horses. And it was one of the most healing experiences. And she became like one of my case study clients. And I had several others that year. And it was an amazing experience because the horses kept saying, you're going to do more of your trainings. You're going to have all of that, but we're training you first because we want you to embody what it is, that we want to teach you, that we want to show you. It's not just coming from a book. It's not just coming from someone else's methodology. And I see the beauty in both. And because I had still been doing a lot of horsemanship and, training and horseback riding lessons and working with these horses, I believe me, it was an internal struggle for me initially to show up this way and to do this work in this way. But there was also something that was developing in me, a level of confidence and trust in the herd and learning how to partner with them and not on my own self-reliance. And that was an incredible first season for me. And that's kind of just how it's sort of unfolded. Now I'm at another facility, and then my Mustang came into my life just over a year ago, Gabriel. And I mean, there's just everything with the horses. They truly have opened up so much for me. Um, it kind of leaves me in awe of the way that they work when we have this beautiful in-depth relationship with them. It's different than a relationship with dogs. I feel like dogs, it's a different energy. It's a different kind of wisdom and medicine that they bring. Horses, I don't even know how to describe it. There's a mystical element to the way that they weave through us and help us to remember and help us to listen. And I know there's the whole science around, and I talk a lot about that with our nervous systems and all of that, but there's something very spiritual and energetic that happens when you're in the presence of an equine. And I remember the Belgian draft at the rescue. I knew she was going to pass away. We had lost another horse, and that was devastating, named Delphine. And it was my first experience of being with a horse colicking and being with her all day. And this was a horse that was so traumatized, and she was a broodmare. And being with her in her last few hours of her life really affected me deeply. But I could also see that the mare, Brie, the Belgian draft, was also on the way out. And she had mentioned that. She had said that to me. She's like, I'm preparing to transition as well. Not now, but it will be soon. And it was about maybe 5-6 months later that she transitioned. And before she transitioned, she said to me, everything had to kind of unfold the way it did here, unfold the way it did in your life. Everything had to happen the way it did for what's coming. And had I actually stayed doing my work at the sanctuary, I don't know if I would be where I am now. And I would never have met Gabriel. So I'm happy to share the story, but I'll take a pause there. It's a lot.
Yeah, no, that's great. What, just on some of that topic of what you talked about, what advice do you have for people who feel a pull towards something like you did with horses? But as you said, you're telling other people, go ahead, believe in yourself, take it. But that's hard personally. It's easy to encourage other people, I think. A lot easier to doubt yourself. You kind of know your weaknesses and you can nitpick all the things that might go wrong or all the reasons it won't work. What advice do you have for people who are feeling like they want to move towards something, but logically, mentally, it doesn't seem possible or likely?
Yeah, that's a great question because I feel like there is a process there. I am one of those individuals that always tells my clients, your mind is a part of the decisions you make. And I think a lot of times we want to kind of, we have a bit of a negative bias toward that in this work, thinking like, oh, just follow your heart and everything's going to work out. But what I've learned over the years with that, because I've taken so many risks and so many leaps, is that it's not always supportive for our nervous systems to do it that way. And I think we have to keep in mind that there's the mind, which is going to be rational and logical, and it does need structure. It does need sometimes a plan. It does need some kind of safety and certainty, right? I do think that if we put all of our energy and all of our focus there, then we can be stagnant and we can be stuck for many months and years and maybe even our entire lives if we put all of our stock into trusting what our mind is saying. Because remember, the mind is designed to protect you. It's designed to keep you safe. So anything that, your heart is saying to do, but it feels unfamiliar, it feels uncertain, it's going to create this protective safety around that, saying all the reasons why you shouldn't move that, or all the reasons why you should doubt what you're hearing or feeling in your body or in your heart or your soul. So I think that there's different components. I think we have to break that down. And sometimes for some people, it's like, okay, well, how much energy and focus are we putting at it through the mind? What is your body saying about this? A lot of the work I do is very much getting into the body and getting out of our heads, because when we can start to create more safety in the body and we can start to titrate that energy around, well, what is that thing that you really want to step into? For a lot of people, might be leaving a job or leaving a business or leaving a relationship. And if we do something, just we make that, we're very decisive and we do it in a way that makes ourselves feel more unsafe, then it can be difficult to find that safety again, right? In the body. It could take some time to come back to a more regulated place. And so I often tell people, we can honor what the mind is saying, but it's also about what your body is saying and how your body is feeling. And I think a lot of times taking baby steps, taking a step toward that decision or that direction, and then putting one foot in front of the other starts to allow your body and your nervous system to not feel like it's making such an unsafe leap into the unknown. And so we have to work on multiple levels of our being, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, energetically. And when we start to incorporate, we start to see ourselves as these holistic beings versus just operating from the mind or just operating, solely from what people are saying out here, and living our lives that way, then in a sense, we're not really being true to ourselves. And oftentimes life has a really interesting way when we are living in a misaligned way, or we're living a life that we've outgrown, to make things externally and even internally more difficult. and feeling more unmanageable, that it sort of forces us to break free from the stories we're telling ourselves or the fear. And oftentimes we don't really want to get to that place, but where sometimes we need to be shaken awake to make the decisions that we've been too afraid to. So, I mean, the advice I would say is, yeah, honor your mind, but you also have to start working with your body and your nervous system and really honoring your soul. Like, on your deathbed, are you going to look back and are you going to regret not making those decisions out of, because you were too afraid or because you were not confident? We live in a day and age where it's impossible to not have access to work on yourself, right? Like, we have access to everything that we could possibly imagine to help move ourselves forward. So there's really no excuse to just stay stuck in fear and doubt unless you are consciously choosing that. And when you choose that, that's the decision and that's the direction your life continues to go.
Yeah. I think that's great advice. It's really easy to lean really far one way or the other, to make the leap or to stay safe. It's really hard to achieve that balance or alignment, like you talk about, where you are reacting to all the different areas of your life rather than, you know, doing a quick, easy, fast, or safe decision,
Yes.
whatever it might be. So, yeah, great advice. Very
Thank you.
tricky to do, I feel like.
It can be. It can be. And that's why it's like one step at a time. It's like, what's the one thing I can do today that can move me in the direction of what I'm feeling might be the next phase of my life or the decision I need to make? Like, what do I need to do to create some level of safety while also honoring the part of my soul, my heart that's saying to go in this direction? Like, what is that next step? And sometimes just starting there, taking those steps you can start to feel a little bit more safe because you're not just forcing yourself into a decision. That I have found that to be one of the most helpful things, even for me personally, because as I've gotten older and especially navigating, perimenopause and all that, I'm not as inclined to make big decisions and just take a huge leap because my nervous system can't always handle that. So we have to
Yeah.
understand what we need and how we're feeling and how we're operating in order to also make these kinds of decisions. And sometimes, you know what, Shaylee, you just have to do it. You have to stop
Yeah.
thinking about it. You just have to do it too, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That is great advice, though, because, you can do something little that's not eliminating all your other options and you can kind of
yeah.
lean into, well, I think this might be the right direction. So take a small step, go volunteer at a horse barn rather than go and get a horse. So,
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
yeah. So you're at the sanctuary doing work. What happens after that? What's next in your story?
Yeah. So some things did unfold while I was at the sanctuary, and it was like a push for me to move on, and I really do see that, and I'm very grateful for that. And it was during that time period that I had met Lori at Midnight Star Stables, which is where I do my work out of here in Tennessee. I started to take riding lessons with her, and I loved the way she treated her horses. She had Mustangs. She worked also with the Bureau of Land Management, and she would do programs where she would gentle Mustangs. So I got introduced into the Mustang world, and I had watched, wild horses online, and was very, aware about these roundups and all of that were happening in the US. And when I got to the facility, I was there and I asked to almost apprentice with her too. I wanted to learn how she was gentling her horses and learn more about her philosophies because it was a little different than being at the sanctuary. And so when I stepped into that space, she was just an angel. She's been an angel in my life, just allowing me to learn and grow and to become a horse guardian myself and to be able to do my work. She's very open. She's very welcoming. And I feel like that was kind of the nudge that Belgian, mayor was kind of giving me, like, you need to go on to a new space because there's something else here for you. And then we talked about me coming and doing the work, and then things just opened up. And, we've been doing beautiful events, women's circles with horses events here, and they've been selling out every single time with barely
Beautiful.
any effort. It's been amazing. So it was really an experiment that I started to do. Do people want this? Are people interested in it? And they clearly were. And I do private retreats. I'm going to be doing a group retreat in the fall, just a small one. And I do, sessions out of the facility. But then, I was not at all looking for a horse.
Yeah.
Like, I literally was
That
like,
happens
okay, I'll get a
sometimes.
horse, right? I'm like, I'll get it in 2020, end of 2025, early 2026. I was thinking I'm going to start to save. I'm going to really, because, to me, it felt so out of reach, just like the whole dream of working with horses. And I was like, oh, I've got a great herd. These horses are amazing. I love them. We're like family. So March 2025, I had this knowing. Again, you can see the patterns of what happens is I hear and I get some kind of guidance, and then something unfolds. And about a week before Gabriel, and that was not his name at the time, arrived into my life, I said to my husband in passing, it was very casual, I think my horse is coming. I didn't even remember. He reminded me. He's like, do you realize that you said this to me last week? I'm like, really? He's like, yes. Few days later, I have this beautiful meditation and this vision of my horse living on Lori's property. And I thought that would be just so ideal and beautiful. The next day she texts me, and I was supposed to go over and do some work, with the horses and her. And she says, well, actually, I think we're going to go on a little field trip today. She's like, there's, a Mustang that's been brought into the vet, to her vet that she uses for her horses. And they can't find any information on him. They don't know anything about him. So they're asking me if I can go and take a look at him to see if we can find his brand and, figure out who this horse is. I said, I would love to come. So we go to the vet, and this little Pinto Mustang comes out of the stall with the vet tech. And it was literally like time stopped. It sounds so cheesy, but it's so beautiful. He stopped, I stopped, and both of our heads, we turned to look at each other. And even the vet tech was like, oh, wow, okay, you want to go with her? And it was like, in that moment, I felt a remembrance. Is the best way to describe it. There was a connection and a remembrance immediately. We went inside, Lori was working with the vet, and I asked, can I hold him? Can I hold his lead rope? Can I, see if he'd be open to touch, and if maybe he wants a groom, because he looked like he hadn't been groomed. He looked like, he didn't look his best. And so they're like, yeah, sure, if he's open to it. And so, I approached very mindfully, very slowly, and he just melted into me, and I melted into him, and I was whispering into his ears the sweetest things. And I could see Lori was watching and the vet was watching, and they were both like, there's something interesting happening here. So all of this was happening, and the background story of why he had been brought in was because the woman who had, I guess, bought him at an auction, is like a rescue rehab. Not really, it's not a 501c3, but she had turned him out on 22 acres for an entire year. And Gabriel had 2 homes before that. I'll explain that in a moment. But, he was kind of unhandled. He didn't want to be caught. He was, just always running away from the halter, had no interest. And that day, him, his best herd mate, and another mare were brought in to be euthanized. And Gabriel's a 7-year-old healthy Mustang. His best friend was put down that day because there was some kind of behavioral and health issues going on. And the mare ended up, she was okay because she was placed beside him in a stall. But she was going to be put down too. I would have taken her too. And she was older, but I guess the owner decided to have her in full. That was the last thing I heard. So the vet was like, I cannot put this healthy horse down. Like, it's unethical. I cannot do that. We'll find a home for this horse. And so all of this is unfolding, and we get into the car and we leave. And I couldn't believe that this horse was there. And Lori's like, well, I can see the connection. So no pressure. If you want this horse, we'll find a way for
She'll
you.
support you.
Yes. So a whole month and a half go by. I'm visiting this horse. I'm going like every week. I go with Lori. I go by myself. Sometimes I bring my husband. I'm going to the stall. I'm visiting him. There's this connection that's forming. He's the most beautiful horse. And it was that night that I had met him, that I had a dream, and he came in and he said, "My name is Gabriel. That is what you will call me. And we have a mission together. Like we're meant to be together." A few nights later, I have a dream and Jesus is in it holding the lead rope of Gabriel. And he says to me, "Can you accept this gift I'm giving you? Can you receive this gift?" And in the dream, I could not, because I was all in my head, kind of like what we were talking about before, all the reasons why this is illogical, why this is irrational, why I should not have it, and take him and bring him into my life. And it was like a whole month of preparation. He was just waiting for me to be ready to accept him. And we found out the information from him. He's an Anaki, Mustang. He was born in 2018, and he was in the roundup of 2021. There's other really cool things about how he came into our lives, which I'll share. And then he was, I guess, adopted out at a BLM event in 2022. And we believe he went to an Amish family, and they did do something with him, but they must have been more heavier handed, because that's where a lot of the fear kind of developed. And then he went to a rescue out here in Tennessee, and there was almost close to, I think, 100 animals. And he was one of the animals. They were either abused, neglected, completely emaciated, starved, all of that. And he was one of those horses, and he was starved. And then this other lady ended up taking him and turning him out on those 22 acres. So Gabriel did not have a great past, and he had every reason not to trust me, not to trust Lori, not to open up. Like, he had every reason to be afraid. And when we brought him home on May 16th of 2025, I mean, our journey had already begun. Our connection was already so strong. I had such an intuitive connection to him. One day I remember, while he was stalled, having this feeling like he got out, and he did. He got out of his stall, like he wanted out, and he was roaming the vet's property, and he would not allow himself to be caught and be brought back into the stall. It took like 6 or 7 people to get him back in, because he was just so afraid. And it was this Mustang that everything that I have, because that's the thing, everything that I've been doing with humans, everything I've been studying, everything I've been working on within myself, you get to apply that with other beings. And he was the one that was training me to learn how to be with him so that he could open up. And I do know for a fact that working with Mustangs and being with a Mustang feels a little different than with domesticated horses. And I don't know if you've experienced that. And I'm so
Yeah.
curious to hear what your experience is like, because they're just so much more sensitive, but it's beyond the sensitivity. It's like there's a level of authenticity and truth that they need from you in order for them to really want to interact with you. Like, they are such keen detectors of safety and unsafety, of feeling like when you're in your body or when you're in your head. And I know that domesticated horses are similar to that. Every horse has their own personality and their own sensitivity, but with the Mustangs, there's just this, they're so close to the land and to the most natural way of living. And it has been like that for them for so many generations. They offer something a little more unique than babies that have been born on farms, and these foals have been handled literally the first moment they come out of, their mothers.
Yeah.
It's like they're not meant to be handled by us. That was not supposed to be their destiny. If we think about that, they were supposed to be roaming our lands freely, with their herds. And for them to come into our lives, we also have to learn how to be with them. And that has been the premise of everything I speak on, that I talk to other horse, owners about, is awareness-based horsemanship, and how that has to become a part of the equation when we're working with any of our horses. And it's thanks to Gabriel. Everything I've learned and everything that he's taught me about how to be and how to, quote unquote, train him to be comfortable and to be safe with me, to be caught. I mean, I have a horse that I don't even need to halter and just show up. And as long as he knows my intention before I enter, his pasture, he wants to join up with me. He wants to be with me. And And that has been because of everything that I've learned walking this journey with him over the last year. And he's my main partner. My clients all connect with him because there's something about what he offers and what he brings that not just I see and feel, but other people can too. And it's been really, truly so incredible and magical.
Yeah. Mustangs really are incredible. And I think, like you said, a lot of it is they are so connected to our innate way of being. I think a lot of domestic horses will accept the world that we give them. And Mustangs are a little bit, in my experience, a little bit more demanding in what they expect if you are wanting to have a relationship with them. And I think that they are more relationship based. I feel like a lot of domestic horses, you can go do your thing with them, put them up. And Mustangs, they'll go with you, but let's build that relationship first. And then it's pretty incredible the things that happen. So yeah, I agree. I've found that there's something different also that's pretty incredible about the way they make you look inward and see like, well, what is it that I need to change and alter here to accomplish the goals or the ideas that I would like to come to fruition.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty amazing what I don't want to say demand from us, but it is it's like I can see it almost in real time. I'm sure you do too. If I come in and I'm hurried or I'm not clear in my intention or I'm a little more dysregulated or out of my body and I'm in my head, I can see Gabriel just his reaction, his response is either turning away or if I have, taken him to, groom him or, do something with him, he will eat voraciously. And he's very clear. He's like, I need you to be slow. I need you to be in your body. I need you to listen to me. And that's the one thing that I love about being with Gabriel is that he has choice. He has a voice when he's with me, even with my work. He always has a choice and none of the horses are ever forced to do anything with me, which is also why I'm in this kind of uncertainty of whether I train him to, be under saddle or I don't. I'm not really entirely sure still how I wanna go about that, and I also want him to be clear with me on whether that is something that he wants for himself, because I think it is really truly beyond sacred and beyond intimate for a horse to allow us to go on their backs and to
Yeah.
carry us, and most horses don't get a choice or a voice in that matter, and so I'm taking it as slow as I can. And honestly, I just have so much joy just being with him and being with the herd and being in their environment and standing with them and breathing with them and sitting with them and crying with them and talking to them and being silent with them. Like there's such a richness there in that. And it's a return to what I believe is our most primal natural state. And we are so out of alignment and so out of sync with that right now as a society.
Yeah.
And that I think alone, yeah, horseback riding is lovely, but I don't know if I'm needing that or wanting that entirely yet. I'm just not sure, and I'm just making peace with that in
Yeah.
being in that space right now.
Yeah. It's a neat thing I think is happening is that people are realizing that horses have value beyond just our hobbies and enjoyment beyond um, going on a horseback ride or whatever. I ride my horses, but I also love spending time just being out with them. That was nothing that I knew before. Like, who just goes and hangs out with your horses? Always like, go get them out, take them for a ride. That was the purpose in having them a lot. There's certainly more purpose than just that, whether people choose to ride them or not. There's a lot more that they can offer us, I think. And as you talked about, that relationship that they expect from us is unfortunately one of the things that makes them difficult because it does require change in people a lot. And a lot of times I don't think that people want to change. We have a goal that we're pursuing and we want it to be the way that we would like it to be. And so as a result, unfortunately, it's the horse that's blamed. But those people who have taken Mustangs in and had that openness and been able to let go of their ego, I think it's a pretty common thread that they just have these incredible experiences of
Mm.
learning with the Mustang and also learning how to interact in the world in a different way. That's certainly what my mare did for me, was
Mm.
give me a lot of lessons to take into my life with me that is like, okay, this works here. It also works in your human world. And it's pretty incredible.
Yeah, I love that you've also experienced that because it's very difficult sometimes when I'm talking to people about what happens when you are with a horse. Because I think that there's also context too, right? You're growth oriented, so you're able to see and connect how being with your horses and interacting and having that relationship in the way that you're describing also affects how you show up in your everyday life. And when you have a growth oriented mindset, it's really, you can make those connections and you can start
Yeah.
to see that. And I think what's so interesting about this work is because it's so opposite of what we're typically like in our society. We're very forward thinking. We're very much about results and, what am I going to get out of something like this, and strategizing and accomplishing, achieving things, that when you come and you're with a horse and you're in the context, like I always say, like I can go and hang out with the horses and not have, a breakthrough like maybe I would if somebody else was, facilitating and guiding a session for me with them, because the context is different intentions. But needless to say, even when we are with our horses, there is a lot of healing, a lot of insight, a lot of beautiful things that are moving and shifting because we're starting to sync up in our co-regulation, right? So just in our nervous systems alone, if we allow ourselves to slow down enough, we can change our heart rate variability. We can, sync up with their breathing. We can slow things down. And in that space, we can start to open to receive more insight. But, you have to be willing to be open to the change like you talked about and to receiving that and having that happen. And that's why I think it's so difficult sometimes to express this work because it is so experience driven. It's experiential. It's something you have to be in order to know and then make the connection into other parts of your life. And when you do, it's incredible because horses show us so much beyond even just leadership. I mean, there's so much around this idea of authenticity, and I'm imagining that you've experienced this so many times. I mean,
Yeah.
like I in April, I will share a little story if that's okay.
Yeah.
Um, I was going through a very difficult month, and it was, stacked things one on top of each other. I had a lot of physical pain on the left side of my body. Um, a friend got diagnosed with a pretty significant cancer diagnosis. And things just felt hard. There was other stressors that were happening in my life. And I would show up to the barn, either after client sessions or just on my own time. And it was so interesting because Gabriel has done this with me before, but not in this way. And I would turn him back out into his pasture, and usually, we have our little routine. And when he goes back inside, I do these exercises with stretching and teaching him how to bow, I would do kiss kiss with him, and he loves it. He nickers, he gets excited, and then
Oh,
usually he
fun.
kind of goes on with his day, like he
Uh-huh.
goes to get water, he goes to eat hay, he goes to graze. On these occasions, after we had done, a little bit of training or grooming or just hanging out, and I would turn him back out, he would stop at the gate and he would just drop his head and go right into this high co-regulation state. We might call it like a nap, in the horse world. Oh, he's just having a little nap. He's sleepy. But there was so much that was happening there because it was like the space shifted for him to hold it for me. And in those moments, on about 4 or 5 occasions, I just would sob and I would just allow myself to be held by him and drop into a level of authenticity and truth with him, and that's all they want. A lot of people think, oh, I have to perform when I'm around a horse. No, the horse does not want you to perform. They want your inside and your outside to be congruent, to be a match. And in those moments, what I've really learned with him is showing up as I am in the truth of who I am allows those horses to also show up for us and to come in and support us in ways that sometimes we don't always get in our human relationships. And when he started to do this, he would stand there for an hour and then he would know when it's done. And it's like he literally would shift. It's like a shape shift almost. He yawns, releases several times, open his eyes, he perks up, stretches, and walks right away.
Yeah.
And he's
It's like,
done.
all
And
right, you're
it's
good.
over. Yeah. And one of the times I captured it actually on camera because I was like, this might be a really interesting thing for people to see what horses are capable of beyond, what we typically think they can do for us. And it was vulnerable. I was crying in it. I ended up getting, I don't know, about 58,000 views. And it was profound, to say the least, that people got to witness what happens when horses go into the state when we are vulnerable, when we are authentic. And I wanted to show that because it gives other people the permission to know that when we are authentic, when we are living in our truth, whether we are feeling really horrible or really sad or we're grieving or we're angry or we've just had a hard day, that when we are living and being in our truth, we actually become more magnetic and we actually have the ability to open up to receive more of the support and the love and the compassion that we're probably looking for and needing. And what would happen if not only we did that with horses, but we also could live that way in our lives? What would happen if we all could live a little more authentically, all had the ability to emotionally regulate, we all had the ability to receive that level of love and care that our Mustangs, that our herds of horses, that our horse can provide, these equines can provide for us. And it just blew me away how um, non-judgmental and just how just the level of the depth of love and care that these beings have for us when we're willing to show up and bare our hearts and our souls to them.
Yeah. And I would imagine a lot of it goes back to your idea of alignment where we're not fighting against ourselves so much. We are in that space
Yes.
where we are aligned. So we're not having to, go back and forth in and out of it. And we can really open up at that point, I think, when we have kind of realigned ourselves. And I'm sure there's lots of stuff happening with the nervous system where we are going into a calmer state when we feel like, we're safe and things are as they should be. I think that we can sense that. And I think the horses probably also sense that. It's
Oh yeah.
really
Mhm.
incredible the way that they can bring to light things that we didn't know about ourselves just by I think a lot of times they're not even doing anything. They're just sharing our presence with us. It's not that we're asking them to perform for us or asking
Yeah.
them to come in and heal us. It's really just share some space together and open up that space where our minds can receive the clarity to be like, oh, okay. Well, now
Yeah.
it's pretty clear.
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes back for me around, I think horses have gained, it's such a trend now around horses. Everything is about horses these days, and I think it's their time because they have the ability as prey animals to bring us back into a more regulated state, to get back into alignment with our most natural selves. And you're right, they're not necessarily doing anything. I do think that horses have different roles in the herds. I think
Yeah.
that there are some that, are more open to being a part of the healing of a client. I think others are better for boundaries and showing us where we have leaky boundaries. I think there are other horses that are, very much can show where there's been trauma and they're maybe more reserved. I mean, they all have different roles in which they show up and what they teach us, what they mirror to us. But I really feel like the growing popularity and trend around wanting to be around horses is because we have strayed so far away from
Yeah.
living in that alignment and living in our most natural state. And and our nervous systems are so dysregulated. I mean, our whole system of our society, it really operates from a dysregulated place. And, that doesn't mean we're always in fight or flight, but a lot of people are living in functional freeze and shutdown and are fawning, so there's just, I think our society is so dysregulated, and they offer us the opportunity to come back to what a regulated body and nervous system feels like, and to learn how to be with all these different parts of ourselves. Like, so much of what I'm doing in the deep work with the horses is teaching people that to become regulated, to become a whole person, to feel aligned, is not just about, well, when I get beyond this transition or I have this goal reached, then I'm going to feel great. It's not about feeling great all the time. It's not about being calm all the time. It's about learning how to be with all these different parts of you, all these different emotions, and not holding judgment and not holding resistance and not shaming it or pushing it down. It's learning to work with your whole being, and do it in a healthy way, in a safe way, in a way that helps you to come back home to yourself and see, like, wow, I know how to be with my grief, and I also know how to live in joy. I know how to, feel abundant in my whole being, and I also know how to process my anger. So it's that I really feel the horses are so beautiful at that, because they are so honoring and non-judgmental when we show up just as we are in that moment, without feeling like we have to put on a mask or perform for them like we sometimes feel we have to do with other people in our lives.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really interesting because you talked about the different role that horses can take on. And I think that is a big piece of it, is that not only in these experiences do we come in as ourselves, and that's the way that we will learn and grow the most, but as horses are allowed to be themselves, there really is that interaction that is becoming a teacher, where this horse recognizes something in different individuals, different needs they have, or different emotions that they're feeling. They're able to recognize those small changes that
Mhm.
we as humans often don't see. They're not necessarily something we can see with our eyes, but horses are able to sense that, because of their keen awareness of the world around them, to where they come in and they play those different roles in the different spaces that they hold with people. So it's pretty incredible.
Mhm. It really is.
Yeah. Talk to us a little bit about, you mentioned how it's not like talk therapy. That's a popular, that's kind of the go-to that we're given a lot. Go talk with someone about your problems. That's often the solutions that are pushed today. Horses obviously don't talk. There's very little talking in the experience. What, in your experience, have you seen is the difference in how this different type of interaction that is not therapy in the traditional sense?
Mhm.
I don't think there's certain principles you need to follow. It's, again, having space together. What have you seen occur in those situations?
Yeah, I mean, this is a wonderful question, because and I'm going to preface this by saying talk therapy is great. It's not me putting it down, right? I
Right.
know
People
we're
may
not.
need it in some situations.
Yes,
And yes.
and there's a time and a place for it. And over the years, because, coaching is not talk therapy, but it's conversation based, right? It's a different format of conversation. But, even when I've just done my coaching work, there's an element where for a lot of people they can stay in their heads. And I've met a lot of clients over the years who have done a lot of therapy and coaching work, and they're still experiencing the same problems. They're still talking about the same things that have happened to them. And I think the forgotten piece in a lot of that, which is where the horses are so beautiful and where they're so supportive, is because it brings a more somatic approach, meaning that we're getting into the body. And the body holds all of our memories, holds everything that we've experienced, all of the emotions, all the stories. So when we are in the presence of a horse and our nervous system start to downregulate and we start to feel more safe. We're starting to feel like we can breathe with them. When we start to slow things down, we make space for revelations to come through, for new insights to come through. And the beautiful thing about it, because in my work, I do a combination, right? I have conversation. I do, different processes. Sometimes the horses don't want to always be a part of the session. And so I split the session into two parts where we're doing some more of the somatic, more of the deeper internal work so that the horses don't always have the pressure of feeling or needing to step in on that. And sometimes we don't. Sometimes we bring that out to the pasture and the horses want to be a part of that. They want to support a client through that. But a lot of the work, which I tell my clients, especially when we're around the horses, is less talking and more in your body. The horses want you to become more horse-like, because in that horse-like state, when there is a sense of space that opens up in the silence or in that slowing down, um, the things that you've not been able to hear or not been able to feel or have not been able to connect with in your body or in your mind, they start to step forward because we've now created the ideal container, if you will, or experience or energy for that to step forward. And horses, I sometimes tell my clients too, like, the things that you maybe have not wanted to say to me or to other people in your life, this is an opportunity for you to talk to the horse silently. And they'll just listen and they'll just hold space for you. Sometimes the very act of sometimes doing that, it can open up so much for the client. So it's talk therapy is talking. It's talking. It's staying in our heads most of the time. I think when therapy includes somatic based, work, trauma work, then it's a little different. But with the horses, something happens out there. I always say to my clients, like, you can't make this stuff up. Like, what just happened and the connection to what you've been, working on internally to what the horse is revealing to you or mirroring in this moment, like, it starts to fuse different, like, it works on your neural pathways in a way that sometimes just talking about something in circles can't. And it starts to connect it on multiple levels of the body in a felt sense than just a thought from a thought perspective. So that's why the work is so interesting, because so many things start to connect that can't when you're just talking about it or when a human is just sitting in front of you. And horses have the ability to lower our defense mechanisms, where when we're with a human, we might still, even if we feel comfortable with someone, still have armor or have those defense mechanisms present with them, where we're not actually able to be as honest and as real as we might like to be, or we don't feel safe or comfortable enough. But with a horse, something happens, it disarms people and they feel safe with them when they're with a regulated horse, of course, right? And they're not, with a horse that maybe is working through its own trauma or its own, patterns. But when you're working with a horse who knows how to be with another human in that way, it is extremely transformative, and the results are very sustainable and often permanent for people because the connection is different in the neural networks of the brain.
I think it is really beneficial for everybody to just recognize that there are other ways out there. Horses are certainly one of those. It can be pushed a lot. And I would even say that talk therapy needs to be used with caution because it can easily lead to rumination, which we know is linked to
Yes.
mental health difficulties. And so while we might be told that there's a particular path, to recognize that there are other methods to
Yeah.
unwind our mind to get to a healthier place is pretty incredible. And like you mentioned before, it's amazing how the horses are really starting to arise more in the world today and for their value to be seen in some
Hmm.
different ways. Tell us a little bit more about what your experience has been with your Mustang. You talked about how he came in pretty traumatized, not really liking to be around people. Sounds pretty clear that people were not a safe space for him. when he came to you. How has that year that you've been working with him and building that relationship, what has that been like, and what have you learned in that time?
Oh gosh, I mean, so much. It's almost hard to even express at times how much I've learned from him. I mean, there really is this balance with Gabriel around living in the yes and and taking things slow. Like he's reminded me of this so much. Like, it's good to slow down. It's okay to not have all the answers or everything figured out. It's, and really, I mean, he's been the true test around any lingering parts of myself that have controlling mechanisms active.
Yeah.
He has definitely challenged that. You know, one of the biggest things that he has taught me, especially when we were working on haltering, is just we can have all these ideas, right, of how to train a horse, how to work with our horses. We can watch this methodology and that horse trainer and hire this person and that person. And the kind of beauty that I think I've had, that I'm taking more ownership around is that I am not a horse person. So, most people would be like, that's crazy to have a traumatized Mustang as your first horse. Like, a
Yeah.
Mustang is a lot of work to begin with, but one that is like been traumatized, that is not quote unquote broke,
Yeah.
or really gentled in a sense. Like, what are you thinking, woman? And it actually has been the perfect fit for me because he has been the one to show me how to work with him. And that all of the work I've done on myself, I've been able to apply that in our connection. And how and this is the thing that blows my mind as I'm working to articulate this. We can try to think our way through the training and try to do all these actions and try all these different methods, but really the heart and soul of the relationship to our horse, like, there's a time and place for those things. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
But the heart and soul of it is this relationship and is this sense of connection to their hearts. Like, really coming into that space of deep love and feeling like you are that safe space for them. And knowing that they are a sentient being. Like, he's like, I have sovereignty. If I don't want to go into the sand arena today, I'm going to show you, woman. Like, and he will show me. He will tell me, you need to slow down before we go and do that. And you don't have to be an animal communicator to read body language on our horses. You just have to be, like you said earlier, like, you have to be willing to put your ego aside and your agenda aside to be able to listen and watch what our horses are telling us, because it can become very clear when you slow down to look at that. And that is something that has been profound for me, is knowing when I am attached to some kind of outcome or agenda versus having the intention and putting the questions out into the space with him of, hey, I would love for us to connect today, Gabriel. I would love to groom you. I would love for you to come out into the pasture and graze, or we can hang out in here today if that is something that you prefer. And I might go with the idea of, oh, we're going to do this or that. But he's taught me that the more I give him choice, I give him like maybe one or two options, and I slow down and I wait for him to make the decision, he will make it. There's a video that I did probably about a few months ago because I wanted to document this whole thing around catching my horse, because I know that's a big thing for a lot of people. And I worked on that right away with him, but in a way that did not flood his nervous system early on. And it got to like, I mean, he literally would see a halter coming and he would just be running away. Like, he'd totally
Yeah.
avoid. He's not a fighter, but he's definitely more of the flight. and he'll go into a shutdown. I've noticed that with him, like a learned helplessness for sure. And I really wanted to help heal that for him and with him to understand that he didn't have to do that. And what I really realized, I mean, his pasture is pretty large. What I started to do is I would set my intention before going out into the pasture, and I would just kind of telepathically put it out there or even vocalize it and say, this is my intention for today. This is why I'm here. I would love for us to work on haltering today and you getting comfortable with that. I'm going to slow down. I'm happy to work at your pace. And whenever I would put that intention out and then step into his space, I never hid the halter or the lead rope. I always have it out in front of me and I'm relaxed and just, have my head kind of lower, not putting too much pressure on him. And once I put that out to him, even if his back was turned to me and he was all the way far out into his pasture, eventually he will turn around and he will come to me. And it's usually about 2, 3, 4 minutes in sometimes, no longer than that. And so he's taught me patience.
Yeah.
Right? Like things take time and it's okay that they take time. It's okay that you don't have all the answers. It's okay that you don't know whether we're going to train under saddle or not right now. Like live in the spaciousness of slowing down, live in the patience, live in the space of like, not everything is going to be what you want. I'm also part of this equation. And that has been so powerful for me as somebody who's truly a go-getter. I've always been a visionary. I've always been very clear on decisions and things I want to do. But going through this latest transition that I went through in the last, 5 years and having Gabriel's really taught me like, sometimes we're not always going to get everything we want in that moment. And sometimes it's not going to be the way we think it's going to be. Sometimes it's going to happen in a way that is by far so much more beautiful than we could ever plan for ourselves. My horse was not a problem to catch. And that's the other thing he's taught me too, is our words are so powerful and
Yeah.
they pick up on everything. So even when I'm around him, I'm very conscious about what I say about myself or him or when I'm telling the story, because they're feeling the energy. They may not understand that, but they feel the intention. They feel the energy around that. And I've been doing that with my dogs for years too. So these are subtle things, but it's powerful because it's had such an effect on my life and the ability to trust myself. Like you opened up a can of worms here, Shalise.
Uh-oh.
I've always felt like I've always been a little different than a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people. I think a lot of people can identify with that to a
Yeah.
certain degree,
Mm-hmm.
like in the horse world, I have to be honest, I kind of feel like the outsider a lot. Especially here in Tennessee, there's a lot of traditional horse people. And um, even when I was doing coaching in Canada, kind of was like a pioneer back then there, not in coaching by any means, because it was already been around for a very long time. But in Canada, it was not something that people really knew about. And so I
Mm-hmm.
always felt a little different. It felt kind of like talking about what I did was kind of strange and a little weird. And in the horse world, even being invited, I was speaking at the Southern Equine Expo. I got asked to do 3 different lectures. And that was such a stretch
Nice.
for me because I was like, oh my God, who am I? I'm not a horse trainer. I'm newer in this world. Like, who am I to go and tell all these, people who probably have had horses for most of their lives or adult lives what to do with their horses and how to be? But when I dug my heels in and I thought about all the things that he had taught me over the last year, I really realized that that was my strength, right? Like being the outsider, not feeling like I belong is actually, there's medicine in that, not just for me, but also for other people. Like the gift I have is being able to teach something that most people have maybe not heard of. And what was mind blowing to me is when as I was preparing for those lectures and thinking about everything that Gabriel taught me and what I wanted to share, is that when I showed up there, because it's a very traditional type of, conference for horse
Mm-hmm.
people, um, I had so many people showing up and telling me how amazing it was what I was sharing. Like they were so open to something different and to something new. And I was getting emails after my talks because I gave people tools to walk home with, like simple things like talking about the intention and, just slowing down, like all these different practices I told them to implement. And people said that their relationship with their horses dramatically changed just within a week.
Oh, that's
And I
beautiful.
thought, wow. And it's like Gabriel that told me, like, you got to trust what you already know. You don't need to belong to all the other horse circles and to be in the traditional world to be able to hold value in what you have to share. Like, this is about you owning it and really embodying that now. And that changed everything for me. It really, truly did. And I surprised myself in a certain degree too with what I prepared and what I shared. And it's thanks to him. I mean, there's so much that I've learned with him. I'm so in love with my little angel. He's a special guy, not just because he's my horse, but because the wisdom and his presence it offers, and he just embodies so much by just being who he is.
Yeah. Incredible teachers for sure.
Yeah,
And beautiful
absolutely.
that you were able to take those lessons and then take them to other people. I think
Yeah.
in many ways it is a benefit not being enmeshed in the horse world, because you're able to look at different angles, see things that other people may not feel like they're even allowed to let themselves see. And so
Yes.
it can be really cool to talk to people who, it's like, I didn't do it this way because I didn't even know that's what they said it should be done. And it worked for me because, all those rules and everything are just things that other people brought in from their experience. It doesn't mean that that's the same way that we need to go. And I think Mustangs especially are good for teaching that sometimes the traditional paths and methods are not the way that is going to lead to success. I just think that's so beautiful that you were able to take the lessons that he gave you and move them forward. And you talked a little bit earlier and just recently that a lot of times things unfold the way they're meant to be. We can often live in a state of regret or that we wish things would have been different, but the
Mm,
reality is, they weren't different. They happened the way that they did, and that's what has brought us to where we are. And then we get to determine how we move forward, and all those things bring that in. Oh, that is one thing that I really liked as you were talking about your relationship with Gabriel. And I was just recently talking on another podcast about how we're co-creators of our life, but also co-creators in our relationship with our horse. And so a lot of times that can lean towards just the person, that they get to do what they want. I think we talked a little bit about how domestic horses are a little bit different. And a lot of times domestic horses are a little more willing to go along with the agenda that the person brings in. But when we can co-create that relationship, which means that the horse is also not just running over us, able to live in ways that aren't healthy or good in the human world, it's something that we work together in partnership to do. That can be really incredible. And as you were talking about your relationship with Gabriel, it was like you were becoming a co-creator. You were going and haltering him, but it didn't have to be exactly on your terms and exactly the way that you envisioned it should be in your head. If we open ourselves up for a little bit of possibility, that can change things substantially.
yeah. And in doing all of that, we've all seen his personality come out so beautifully. He was shy, he was, timid when we first got him, rightfully so. And we all talk about it like a year later. It's like he's completely blossomed and bloomed into more of who he is. And the confidence is there. And it's very clear to know who Gabriel is. And I think that's also why, even in April, like he has felt more and more safe to be able to show up for me in those moments because he also trusts me in the bond we've created. And it's like, I think that the bottom line is that we're in partnership, right? We're having relationship with everything and everyone in our lives. And, I always, told people in my talks that I was giving, it's like, look at the relationship you're having with your horse, and if a good relationship can always be even better, right?
Yeah.
And if you're not having the relationship you want, then it's likely not your horse's fault. It's probably you,
Yeah.
working
Certainly not
on
entirely the horse's fault.
no,
Absolutely.
it's like working on yourself is working with your horse and working on your horse. And I think that's one of the things that was really a huge component to what I've been sharing and what I'm an advocate around, that working on yourself is not just for the benefit of you and for the people around you and what you're going to do in the future and how you feel. It's also in benefit of the horse you have and the relationship with your herd and your animals. They are a part of your interconnectedness and all the webbing of your life. And when you do end up transforming yourself, you also end up transforming your relationship with the beings like your horses in your lives.
Yeah. And you talked about haltering being an issue, and it is a very common
Yeah.
struggle that horse owners run into. But if we can step back for a minute and look at it, it makes sense that we are, we're on human time rushing in. We probably have an agenda. We have a time frame that we're able to be with our horses, and we're going in with an idea in our head. And it's like they're just minding their business out in the pasture or in the corral, and we come rushing in there trying to do whatever we want with them. It's no wonder that they don't really want to be around us sometimes when that's the way that we enter into their environment. So
Yeah.
I do think, just having a little more mindfulness that how we enter the world of theirs can make a difference is pretty transformative in the relationship that we can have with our horses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In closing, can you tell everybody where they can find you, how they can connect with you, all those good things?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can visit equinesouljourney.com to learn more about the work that I do with humans and horses. And I'm predominantly on social media on 3 different channels. You can find me on Instagram at Vanessa Petronelli, on Facebook at Vanessa.Petronelli, and on TikTok, I am Vanessa Petronelli.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on and talking about your experiences, and especially your experience with Gabriel, the lessons that he's learned. I love that you are taking this opportunity to integrate horses into the healing and encouragement and support that you've already been giving humans, because they do add such a brilliant element to it to help us really lean into who we are and to find that alignment like you talk about. So thank you once again for being here and for sharing your experiences and your story.
Thank you so much, Shalisa. It was an honor. I loved our conversation.
Thank you for joining us and learning about horses that heal and the humans who help them. We hope you'll continue with us on this journey. We'd love for you to subscribe on your favorite platform and follow The Touch of a Mustang on any of the major social media outlets. Please share with your friends, anyone who loves horses, or anyone who might be struggling and could benefit from this message. If you have felt the healing power of horses or help them in their divinely appointed mission, please reach out. We want to hear your story. As we say goodbye, always remember that the horse is always there to help you heal.